Only bad things, I hope. All right, so in all of your genetic research for resistance, have you noticed any traits, visible traits, that have been linked to that resistant gene? So things to look for, like if roses are popping up in your beds that have a distinctive characteristic, are they tied to resistance? Is there a color, a shape, anything?
The answer to that question is complicated, and I have to be careful. One of the things you have to understand is we have been under a lot of pressure. When we get one of those big federal grants, you have 4, depending on the grant, 4 to 5 years to produce. The first year is putting stuff in the ground. So then you've got 3 years to produce. But you got less than that because you got to write your final report by the last day of that grant. So really a 4-year grant has about 2.5 years to get stuff done. Okay, I mean really actually do the work. Now because of that, when you have your guidelines of what your deliverables are, that is where you have to put on blinders. Okay, but you are observing things. One of the things that I have noticed about Rosette, a paper just came out recently out of the University of Tulsa about this. I'm not in agreement with a lot of stuff in that paper. Allie and I know that. We're good friends. And but that's okay. I'm glad it's published because now it'll put it in the pool of public fault. And so what that is, one of the trends we have noticed is that some roses will cultivars, and this does seem to be genetic. Some roses, cultivars, will have multiple witch's brooms. Some rose cultivars, every branch will become a witch's broom. But then there are other cultivars where it'll be just one gigantic witch's broom on one cane. And if you remove that cane, none of the other ones develop it. Okay, there appears to be some type of compartmentalization occurring in some cultivars and not others. Now, we have discussed that a lot, but it is not part of this grant where all the focus is at. So we know it. And the question is when will somebody have time to step back and do that? Now, there have been some other things. Now, that I published a paper a graduate student of mine did in Journal of Environmental Hort on resistance to the mite, resistance to the vector. That was a disaster study, in my opinion, because some accessions of the same species would be very different. And then even within that, we had so much variation from one plant to the next that it destroyed us. We didn't have enough reps. We had 5. If I did that study again, I would have 20 to 25. Okay, so we didn't have enough replications. That whole paper turned out to not be so much about which ones were resistant, about how we would do the study again in the future. Okay? And the reason why I put that in there is because and I had so many colleagues say, wow, I can't believe you published that. This is the kind of stuff we all know, but we don't put that in papers. You know, what didn't work, why we think it didn't work, and what we would do better. But I knew I was ending the end of my career. So it was time to get this kind of stuff out. So to answer your question, yes, we notice those kind of things. No, I'm not willing to share a lot of it for the simple reason that I don't have any data to back it up. It's all observational. And there is a fundamental difference between observing something and actually having empirical data to back it up. And so unfortunately, that's where I'm at. Yes?
Have you seen anything with that according to the colors? I think generally rosarians think that lighter colors, yellows and whites, are more prone to diseases and stuff.
Well, they certainly are to some, botrytis being one. Japanese beetles also certainly like non-reds more than they like reds, but if there's only red, they're going to eat it. But we're talking about, with rosette, we're talking about a mite that can't see colors. Now, one of the things that a graduate student who started out to be mine, when I first got sick and they put me on chemo, they put me on attacked my heart. And that's why I was retired, but I was still doing research and I had to back away at that point. And so she had to switch to someone else. But one of the things she was looking at and the things that we were using to attract the mites were different colors. And that mite expert in Beltsville recommended the colors we should look at. But he said, I don't know. They do have some cells that we think are photosensitive, but they don't have eyes like most insects or most animals or people do. So he said he didn't know. What she found was color did not matter in attracting the mites at all. Oh, speaking of which I did not put in there, because I didn't know how to put it in there. Some people are getting great control of adult midges by putting out blue solo cups with a sticky substance on them, and they get covered, in the adult midges. I didn't put that in there because, like what I just talked about I just couldn't find enough to back that up to make it comfortable for me to put it in there. But there's all kind of things like that. But in the case of this, they're blind. Color doesn't seem to matter. They appear to do it by random or where they land, and then they'll move on until they find a host or die. But there's so many of them. But it only takes a few to land on a rose to really start causing havoc. Anybody else? Yes.
Regarding rose midges, is there any research on growing degree days for it?
I have not seen any, and I looked. I even called a retired entomologist, Frank Hell, and I called my brother and asked that specific question. And I got the answer, an interesting answer from Frank. Rose midge has been discussed a lot at entomology extension specialists ornamental meetings, okay? And then they asked a $100 question. Who's going to work on this? And the first question that comes back is, who's got money to pay for it? Okay. That is the thing that has not been found. If we can find, and you say, well, how did you get Rosette done? Well, it wasn't until some of the rose company presidents started screaming, we're going to be put out of business if something isn't done about Rosette. Until you can put pressure on the right politicians, that is not going to happen. And I can assure you right now, I love them. I have used them, but the ARS Research Trust does not have the kind of money needed to do this kind of experimentation, okay? It will take multi-scientists from multi-states, because you cannot assume what happens in Virginia is going to work in Ohio. What works in Ohio is going to work in Oregon, but we need that kind of project for rose midge. It is crying for it, but it has not happened. This data, and remember what I said at the thing this morning. Food and fiber crops get the bulk of the research dollars, not ornamentals. So you're fighting that fight at the beginning. So this is a tough thing. Anybody else? If not, thank y'all so much.